The day my son, Leo, turned 16 was supposed to be a celebration. We had a small gathering, just close family. The cake was his favorite, chocolate fudge, and the presents were piled high on the dining table. He smiled, he laughed. He opened his gifts with the polite enthusiasm of a teenager who's mastered the art of social graces. But I saw it. The slight tremor in his hands, the way his eyes would glaze over for just a second. A flicker of something distant and heavy behind his smile. I'm his mom. I see these things. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and the last of the wrapping paper was stuffed into a recycling bag, I found him sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. The new gaming console I'd been so excited to give him sat unopened in its box. I sat down next to him, the mattress dipping under my weight. The silence in the room was thick, heavier than just the quiet of a house settling down for the night. I didn't push. I just waited. I've learned over the years that with Leo, silence is often the best invitation to speak. Finally, his voice, barely a whisper, broke the stillness. Mum, can I tell you something? Of course, sweetie. You can tell me anything. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind you take before plunging into icy water. I don't think I can do this anymore. My heart squeezed. Do what, honey? School? The soccer team? My mind raced through all the typical teenage pressures. He shook his head, still not looking at me. Everything. Getting up. Going to school. Pretending I'm okay. Pretending I'm normal. The word hung in the air, sharp and painful. It's like there's this heavy, wet blanket over me all the time. And it's getting heavier every day. Some days it's so heavy I can't even breathe. He finally looked up, and the raw despair in his eyes stole the air from my own lungs. This wasn't teenage angst. This wasn't a bad mood. This was something deep and terrifying. This was my child, my brilliant, funny, kind-hearted boy, telling me he was drowning. I feel broken, Mom, he said, his voice cracking. Like a part of me that's supposed to work just doesn't. Everyone else seems to have this manual for life, and I lost my copy. I try so hard to smile and be the person everyone expects me to be, but inside I'm just screaming. And I'm so tired of screaming. Tears were streaming down his face now, silent and relentless. In that moment, all my own fears, my own anxieties about parenting melted away. All that was left was a fierce, primal need to protect him, to hold him, to pull that suffocating blanket off of him, even if I had to tear it to shreds with my bare hands. I wrapped my arms around him and held him tight, just like I did when he was a little boy who'd scraped his knee. He buried his head on my shoulder and sobbed, great, heaving sounds that shook his whole body. He was 16, almost a man, but in my arms, he was my little boy again, scared of the monster under the bed. Only this time, the monster was real, and it was inside his own head. You're not broken, Leo, I whispered into his hair, my own voice thick with tears. You are not broken. You're hurting, and we're going to get you help. You hear me? This is not just your fight. It's our fight now. That night was the beginning of a long and honestly, a very difficult journey. The first step was making an appointment with our family doctor, who then referred us to a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I remember sitting in the waiting room, squeezing Leo's hand, both of us terrified of the unknown. The diagnosis, when it came, was both a relief and a punch to the gut. Major depressive disorder and severe anxiety. It had a name. The monster had a name. It wasn't just him being dramatic or lazy, or any of the other horrible things he secretly believed about himself. It was a medical condition. A real, treatable illness. Therapy was tough. There were sessions where Leo would barely speak a word. There were others where he'd emerge red-eyed and exhausted. We tried different medications, a process of trial and error that was frustrating and sometimes disheartening. There were days he felt better, and we'd feel a surge of hope, only to be followed by a dip, a day or a week where the blanket felt just as heavy as before. Through it all, I learned that my role wasn't to fix him. I couldn't. My role was to be his anchor. It was to make sure he took his medication, to drive him to therapy and wait, no questions asked. It was to sit with him in the dark when he couldn't find the words, just to let him know he wasn't alone. It was to celebrate the small victories, getting out of bed on a bad day, finishing a homework assignment, joining us for dinner instead of hiding in his room. I learned to manage my own fear. Every parent's worst nightmare is getting that call or coming home to an empty house. Those thoughts would creep in during the dead of night, but I realized that living in fear wouldn't help him. He needed my strength, my stability. So I found my own support system. I talked to my husband, my sister, a close friend. I even joined an online forum for parents of children with mental health challenges. Hearing their stories, sharing my own, made me feel less isolated. We started building what Leo's therapist called a toolkit. We found things that helped him manage the worst of it. Long walks with our dog Buster. Listening to specific playlists he created, some were calming, some were just loud and let him rage. He rediscovered his love for drawing, filling sketchbooks with intricate, fantastical creatures. It was a way for him to get the chaos out of his head and onto the page. One afternoon, about a year after his confession, I found him in the kitchen, attempting to bake a cake from scratch. Flour was everywhere on the counter, on the floor, on his nose. He was concentrating so hard, tongue sticking out the side of his mouth, just like he did as a toddler. He looked up and saw me, and gave a genuine, unforced smile. It lit up his whole face. "It's supposed to be a chocolate fudge cake," he said, gesturing to the lopsided creation in the pan. "It looks kind of sad, but I think it'll taste okay." In that moment, I saw my son again. Not the illness, not the diagnosis, but Leo. The funny, slightly clumsy, big-hearted kid I knew was still in there. The blanket wasn't gone. I know it might never be completely gone, but it was lighter. He had learned how to lift it, how to find pockets of air to breathe. He was learning how to live with it, instead of being buried by it. His journey is far from over. There are still bad days, but now there are so many more good ones. He's back on the soccer team, not because he feels pressured to, but because he genuinely missed it. He's applying to colleges, thinking about a future in graphic design. He talks openly about his therapy sessions, sometimes even making jokes about his brain goblins. He taught me the true meaning of strength. It's not about never falling. It's about getting up, again and again, even when it feels impossible. And he taught me the true meaning of love. It's not about shielding our children from all pain. It is about walking with them through the fire and showing them they have the strength to make it to the other side. That night, when he was 16, my son confessed his deepest pain to me. It was the most terrifying and, ultimately, the most important conversation of our lives. It wasn't the end of his world. It was the beginning of his healing. And for any parent out there who might see that same distant look in their child's eyes, please, listen. Create that silence. Let them know that their confession is not a burden, but a brave first step. It's an act of trust, and the greatest gift you can give them in return is to believe them, to hold them, and to fight alongside them. You are not alone, and neither are they. Thank you so much for listening to our story. If you or someone you know is struggling, please know that help is available and you don't have to go through it alone. We'll leave some resources in the description below. Please take care of yourselves and each other.